All right, you guys all hear me? Beautiful. All right. Obviously, I just got off the practice field, just had our travel meeting. We'll take 74 guys with us to Penn State. Excited to get this crew on the road. I thought the bye week was productive, like we talked about on Monday. A lot of guys made some progress from a health standpoint. I know wanted to give Jake his opportunity. He was actually having surgery as we spoke Monday, but I kind of wanted to let him have his venue, his opportunity to announce that. Very disappointed for him, but also blessed, and I had a chance to coach him through those games, get a chance to be around him. When we first started talking to Jake, obviously everybody in the building, everybody in the community talked about who he is and what he represents. We had quite a few conversations trying to get him to maybe come back and join us. And then when he decided to declare for the NFL, we still stayed in contact. And then so his journey back here was very unique. And then, because of when he arrived, he literally didn't get here until like a couple days before spring ball. So he didn't go through spring ball, and then came on the scene during the fall with us as coaches. Never had a chance to be around him. And I know as coaches, we're just extremely blessed to get a chance to work with him during that time. A very special relationship. And I told him that when this went down that I would do anything tomorrow. When we talked, I said, I'll do anything for you today, tomorrow, and for the rest of the time, because I just have a great respect for who he is. So unfortunately lost another really good player for the year. But he's on the road to recovery, and I'm sure we'll hear from Jake Hansen again. Very excited to see where his future goes. From an injury standpoint, I touched base with it earlier. Basically, Tuesday before practice, they cleared BP. So Brandon has been able to practice with us all week. So really to have the whole stable of quarterbacks into the game plan, or have the ability to have them into the game plan for this coming week. It's been good to have them working with us there. We'll make a decision on where that goes for Saturday. At the same time, everybody else will see it. We'll make that decision public when the game starts. So I won't name a starter before that. Our players know, our coaches know. Everything's been that way since Tuesday's practice forward. So excited for that group. From an injury standpoint, really from tackle to tackle, all of our tight ends are healthy. Wide receivers are 100% healthy. On defense, got everybody back except for obviously the ones that we've talked about and discussed. And excited for the opportunity to go into Penn State and play in a hostile environment. I know it's their homecoming and all that goes into it. We've prepared really for a variety of different looks offensively. All three quarterbacks, we've had game plans in and an understanding. Don't really know who's going to show up on Saturday. So we'll go with it as it plays out before us in the game. So with that, open up for questions.
Coach, I'm just curious if you saw your comments from Monday go a little viral. A lot of people sharing, was he taking a shot at current players, foreign players, the comments you had on the offensive line and where they went. I just was curious if you wanted to clarify that or if you had any comment on what that happened.
Yeah, I think the thing that unfolded on Monday was probably overly shocking to me. They're my words, I said them, but they were completely taken out of context, either through people on this call or people that aren't here. Unfortunately, that's kind of the world we live in. I think anybody that knows me, and fortunately for us, our players really know me. Those were completely taken out of context. Someone had asked me a question about what we did during the bye week, and I was talking to him about recruiting. Another question was asked about recruiting in the future. It was not a question about our current roster when I answered it. It had nothing to do with our current roster. The issue that came to light was specifically when I was asked about our current roster moving forward. I said that, and I know several of you guys in the room laughed. I sat there and watched. I talked about in recruiting, I believed in the Kentucky Derby theory of recruiting, that everybody wants to remember or have the right horse. And that's what it was about. It had nothing to do with our roster that I'm currently coaching or working with, who I think that's why it really was a non-issue with our guys. Once it was clarified, I literally on Tuesday morning showed them the entire transcript, gave them access to the things that were physically said in that room. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in, right? When little snippets get taken here and there and spins get taken and they get completely blown out of proportion. Anybody that's commented on it that doesn't know me is really taking it out of context, completely different from what the question was that was asked, and we'll live through the moment of it. Can't tell you, I appreciate all the people that reached out to me, that national media especially, that understands what's happened and what transpired. The kids have been awesome. So it's kind of a non-factor in this building. I understand you can't do anything about social media. You guys got jobs to do, and I understand sometimes click and bait and comments are part of it. That's what you got to do. Unfortunately, when you're a 2-5 football team, sometimes those things get amplified. So we'll advance from this moment forward and take it as a learning moment for everybody involved.
And can you tell us much about the players' reaction when you showed them the transcript or showed them the clips? And we've heard from the players that they were all, they saw it as a non-issue, but as a team, can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, not really. We have routine team meetings every morning, and I just started off. Usually, I start the day off with how we attack practice, what the schedule is, everything that lays out. I made that special point. I would say probably, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of people in the room had no idea what we were talking about. We get together at 7 a.m., so it really didn't become an issue till later. But that's the thing that I kind of was blown away with. None of the people at the media on Monday took any inkling to what was said or did. I know actually you did, Robert. You mentioned something about a shots fired, which, I mean, you got to do what you got to do. But like, I don't think anybody in that moment thought it was a big issue. Otherwise, I would have got more questions. But when it was taken out of text and put in a social platform that people can click and only take a minute of a conversation that was in a totally different direction, that's the result of it. And our players had no issue that moving forward.
So since you mentioned my tweet, if I could just ask, our interpretation, or at least my interpretation in the room, wasn't a shot at players, but possibly at, when you mentioned 3 recruiting classes that left you with no linemen, that it was possibly directed toward the former staff. Are you saying that was not directed toward the former staff?
I'm not going to make this about that, but I think if you check the record, Robert, and everybody on this call, I've been very complimentary about this staff and the players that they left us repeatedly. Talking about the people that they've left, I probably can assure that I've mentioned that at least 20 times on those Monday press conferences throughout, but that all gets washed away by one generalization. So I was stating facts about where we are when I mentioned offensive lineman and defensive lineman. That is a position of need because of numbers, not because who I do or don't have. We don't have the numbers at the offensive and defensive line, which is a premium in our program. We went from basically a defensive front that has 2 defensive linemen to now the one that has 3 defensive linemen. So we don't have the numbers. That's strictly it. If you want to take it in any other direction, that's your prerogative, but that's not the intent whatsoever. And it wasn't anything derogatory to past staff, which I've been very complimentary to throughout my entire tenure here.
Good, thanks.
Hey, Coach, I'd imagine that Jake in some capacity will still be around the team. So what do you think he can offer, just knowing, I mean, everyone knows his resume, but just from a leadership standpoint, a guy who's been here for what seems like forever, and one of those guys who's been the face of the program for the last few years.
James, a common phrase that I use in our building a lot is, seniors graduate, but traditions never do. And sometimes everybody thinks those are traditions of a team, right? Like the ILL but traditions to me are from people, right? So like the tradition that Jake Hansen brings to this program is, he's obviously been a very productive player on the field. He's a very, very accomplished student. But what he represents as a football player in this building, the way he prepares, the way he orchestrates what he does during practice, the way he teaches young players. There was a period there when he was out for a couple of weeks where I literally saw him go over and coach the look team kickoff cover unit, right? So guys that are simulating the kick cover against the opponents that we're playing, it just spoke volumes to what he is. When Doug Kramer was going to miss a game earlier in the year, I walked up to him and I said, listen, I know you're not going to play this week. Anything you can do with these young players to teach them the way you prepare the game is worth its weight in gold, right? So, Jake is going to, he had the surgery. He's basically recovering from that. He's going to be at home for a couple of weeks. Then he's going to come back and join our program when he can just physically get back on his feet and get around and do the things he needs to do. But I told him priority number one for him is to get the surgery, start his rehab process, start the development to where he needs to be. But I would suggest probably the last 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season here, the normal scheduled season that we have in front of us, we'll absorb him as best we possibly can. And he asked that question. We'll open him obviously with wide arms as long as he wants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned the hostile environment you're going to face at Penn State. What do you remember about your first trip there? What kind of stood out for you?
Yeah. My very first trip there, I was a grad assistant. I was in the press box at the University of Iowa, and Bill Brazier was our defensive coordinator. He was sitting next to me, and Coach Brazier always had a great way of looking at things. And they had a variety of really good players. It was during the latter tenure of Coach Fry's time there, and they had scored 28 points in the first quarter. And I was sitting up there in the booth. It's my first year in coaching. I'm kind of looking around. I'm kind of trying to understand what was happening. Hadn't been through many rodeos yet. And I look at Coach Brazier had taken 28 times 2 and wrote 56. And then he took 56 times 2 and had written obviously 112. And he looked at me, put his hand over his mic. He looks at me, he goes, "They could beat us 112-0." And I'll never forget that. Because here's this coach that I had mentored under and was like just incredibly respectful for, but he was doing quick math on what could possibly happen. So that was my first experience. But on the flip side of it, then I remember going on the road with Kirk Ferentz. We went 1-11 our first year together. And then with the next year, we had won 3 games. And one of the first Big Ten game that we won was on the road at Penn State. And I believe it was an overtime game. Ryan Hansen was a safety that intercepted a pass, and we won the game. And I distinctly remembered just the environment, because that was at the beginning, the infancy of that program under Kirk, that kind of started the bowl going in the right direction. So then was able to have a couple other successful moments there, but also some times that haven't been successful. So really, really excited about the opportunity to take this crew and start a new tradition.
That place has become kind of a nightmare for visitors over the years. It had the downtime, but it seems like they're back up to being, and obviously the players they have and the team probably helps, but is it really intimidating compared to some of the other places you've been over the years? Yeah,
Bob, I would say, 2 things, just pure numbers, right? They have, the 110,000, and it's going to be homecoming. They get the whiteout thing going. James has been a tremendous asset to the program there and what he's been able to do. I was there under Coach Paterno's plan, right? I was there under O'Brien. I haven't been there with James yet, but this is definitely an environment that we've been preparing for it all week with the crowd noise. We actually had our offensive unit practice in the crowd noise, and we separated and put our defense out on the grass fields. We all were out on the grass Tuesday, but we've actually had split practices that we've never done. So really tried to humanly possible prepare our guys as much as we possibly can for the crowd noise factor on offense, special teams, and a little bit on defense.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Bret, quickly, I was hoping you might be able to evaluate 7 games in Isaiah's first season at wide receiver and what you've been impressed with. And just knowing his mentality, I'm sure his expectations were higher than anybody else's, but on just what you've seen out of him throughout this first half of the year.
You know what, man, it's actually a great point. What you get lost in, everybody's been watching Isaiah for a while as a football player here, but he's really 7 games into a wide receiver career, right? So as much of an advantageous position it was to be a quarterback and learn that through, throwing the ball to him and stuff, there's just different things about catching the ball, attacking a defender. As a quarterback, you've always been in the middle of the formation working out. Now he attacks, whether it's a vertical route, a crossing route, there's just different things he's never done. George McDonald has been absolutely awesome with him. But I think just the pure art of catching the ball has really, take a significant jump here in the last couple of weeks. His ability to handle the ball and make decisions while he's in a run, when he's running the ball after a catch, has been increased. So he's intelligent, he's athletically gifted, and he's got a great competitive nature to compete with. So we're just beginning to scratch the surface of what Isaiah Williams will be.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, you spoke a lot about your relationship with Jake Hansen in your opening statement, but I don't know if we're going to get an opportunity to ever speak with him in a formal way ever again. So, and I'm not asking you to put words in his mouth, but do you remember what that kind of moment was like when he found out he wasn't going to be able to play the rest of the season?
Alec, I think Jake would probably talk to you guys. I'm not going to make him, right? But I think once he gets back in town, we'll definitely make that happen. I know that gives you guys content. All I know is this, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have gathered, right? I absolutely positively take full responsibility for our players and both success and failure, health and obviously injury. So like in my entire coaching career, whenever a player is down on the field, I go to the field, right? Like I go for two reasons. I want to find out how they feel, right? What's the situation? And to be able to say something or just be there, like their parents can't be there, right? Like their brothers and sisters can't be there, so I can be there, right? And I learned that through the coach that I played for, because I got injured and I remember looking up and seeing his face. And so as much as people, especially in the light of this week, right, think I don't care about my players, the truth and the reality of who I am is the exact complete opposite. And when I walked out there and I saw Jake and I saw him look at me, I hadn't even asked the doctors what was wrong yet. I knew it was something that was significant. Now, we didn't do the test and we weren't getting anything confirmed until later that weekend. When I found out, I reached out to him and just said, hey, I understand it just got confirmed, everything we had talked about, I'm here. And he shot me a text. He said, Coach, I'll be in tomorrow. I don't really want to do this over the phone. So we had our little moment there. I shot him a text Monday when he was about an hour and a half out from surgery. We had a little moment there, and then yesterday when they put out the graphic that he did, and there's a picture of him. He's kind of swolled up, his uniform's all jacked up, and all of our players had kind of retweeted. A bunch of people had retweeted it, and I just kind of took a moment and I screenshot it and I sent it to him, and I said, how'd you get my arms superimposed on your graphic? And like, I just felt that was what we needed, right? Like, and he responded back really awesome, just some exchanges there. Like the kid is he's just awesome. Like he's such an incredible thing. Like I only know I got 7 games with him, but the thing I made to him was like, thank God I got 7 games with you, man, because he made me better. He's like, Coach, it was very complimentary what he's learned from me, but like I said, man, I learned from you, right? Like what you've taught me. So unfortunately, that's part of this game, man. That's what we go through. But I think he'll be pretty good in the future, personally. So we'll do everything we can to get him there.
Thanks, Brett. I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, I've got kind of, I guess, a random one for you. I know we talk about the lads a lot, but Ethan Tabell is pretty highly regarded for what he does. What makes him so good? And the second part is like, he seems like he's kind of got a pretty big personality. I mean, likes to crack jokes. I feel you learned about him in that aspect as well.
Yeah, Alec is ladless, right? He's unfortunately born on U.S. soil, so he couldn't join the group. But those guys are kind of a threesome that's always together. I give Ethan a hard time. Like, as I was getting to know these players, I would call them, right? Or we'd FaceTime or whatever. And I remember the first time I called Ethan, he was with his family decorating cookies, right? So my long snapper that everybody was bragging about was decorating cookies, and it was appropriate. It was in the holiday season. So like occasionally I'll throw him some fire if I want to get on him a little bit about decorating cookies, right? I don't normally know if many 21, 22-year-old young men are decorating cookies, but he does have a big personality. He's very efficient at what he does. The combination of those 3 guys on Jane McCourt's field goals is phenomenal. Usually the spin is perfect. The aiming point is great. Blake gets it down and James kicks it. But also just on the punting exchanges, he does something that's a little bit unique. Most teams now fire the snap and have the center take off without in protection because of the way the rules are different in the NFL versus college. But we've actually engaged and let him showcase that he can protect and snap, which is something the NFL likes. So, every NFL team that comes through here, I visit with them. And I talk about those 3 core guys as specialists that are as good as I've ever been around. So, yeah, I think he'll get an opportunity to do something at the next level.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Brett, the 2 weeks have afforded you probably to put in some new things, some wrinkles. Same for Penn State. What kind of factor could the unknown or surprise be in this ball game?
Yeah, great point. I think, anybody that goes into a bye week, you're always going to take a deep breath and look at what you do well, what you don't do well, try to accentuate that, try to stay away from the things you don't do well. I think commonality and wrinkles are everywhere in college football. For me, I've always tried to maximize our roster, right? So, we've incorporated different players. We're going to get a couple freshmen involved. We've been talking about Barlev, right? So Barlev's going to get involved a little bit there. Kanena, oh man, linebacker Dylan Rosiak is back from injury, so Dylan's going to get involved in the game plan. So it's just, from our standpoint, it's more about players getting involved. There'll be obviously different things that come up, but I think the fact that as coaches, you get a little bit of extra time to take a deep breath and realize what might work well, especially defensively, if we want to get some different personnel involved and use their strengths. I think Ryan's always doing a great job about building off that, and Tony offensively, has been able to settle in with, who are probably our most featured go-to guys that, offensively, we want to get the ball in their hands as much as possible. I think that's something you'll definitely see come out on Saturday. All good?
Thanks, Coach.
I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Coach. Safe travels to Penn State.